Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:07, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, is with us this hour. We will talk to him about the very real fight that the state has before the United States Supreme Court on whether or not foreigners can vote in Virginia's elections. Can't believe we got to this point. Attorney General Miyares weighs in on the latest. And then Tucker Carlson is with us at 5 o'clock. A lot to discuss with him on the state of the country, the state of this race. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
So tonight is really about, it is on the site where he had his January 6th rally. It's in, the backdrop is the White House. To really pinpoint what this race is about, who do you see in that Oval Office? Do you see somebody who sat there, 4 years ago, stewing and plotting on how he was going to seek his revenge or how he was going to overturn the will of the voters and claim he won the election? Would somebody who sat there watching the United States Capitol being stormed by a violent mob that he incited, knowing that his vice president was up there and saying, so what? Is that what you want as a president? Or do you want somebody, instead of having an enemies list, like Donald Trump, has a to-do list?
Yeah, that's the positive, forward-looking vision of the country on display. That's CNN's Stephanie Cutter making the case for Kamala, who will be speaking tonight, 7 o'clock at the Ellipse. It's her closing argument. It's not one about the well-being of the country. Instead, it's how do I tear down my opponent? For more on this, I want to bring in Julie Kelly, the author of the Declassified by Julie Kelly Substack and the author of the book on January 6th. Julie, good to have you back with us.
Vince, thanks for having me on. What a lineup today. Thank you for including me, this lowly Substacker.
Oh, no. There's nothing lowly about your Substack or your work, Julie. We really appreciate it. And so tell me, first of all, you are in town today, which is fun. Why are you in town?
I'm in town for a few meetings, and then tomorrow I will be covering a resentencing hearing for a 61-year-old woman from Pennsylvania who DOJ wants to throw back in jail after her 1512C2 conviction was vacated and send her back to jail on misdemeanors.
How old is she?
She is 61 years old. She has no criminal record. She committed no violence on January 6th, but she was convicted at a bench trial by Chief Judge James Boasberg, an Obama appointee, of the 1512C2 and 4 misdemeanors. Of course, the 1512C2, after the Supreme Court ruling, which we've talked about, was vacated after the Supreme Court overturned that. She has remaining 4 misdemeanors. The DOJ wanted to throw her back in prison, even though her husband of 40 years just died of liver cancer. But they want to continue to punish J6ers for protesting the 2020 election. I will be covering that hearing tomorrow. I will be tweeting it at Julie_Kelly. Too, they had to back off of asking for more prison time. Now they want to keep her in home incarceration for 9 months. A woman who just became a widow, stuck in her home for 9 months. That is this bloodthirsty, ruthless DOJ.
I know. And meanwhile, the left keeps saying stuff like, Trump's going to throw everybody in prison. Trump's going to throw people in internment camps. Trump's going to bomb the studio of The View. That's what the women of The View say. It's so crazy. Meanwhile, what's actually happening in real life is that the Biden-Harris administration is imprisoning its political opponents. In fact, one of those political opponents just got out of jail today. Here's Steve Bannon earlier today.
Nancy Pelosi sent me to a federal prison. She sent me to a federal prison as a political prisoner to do 2 things: to make sure that she tried to tamp down the power of this show, right? Tamp down the power of the show, and also to break me. Nancy Pelosi, take out your number 2 pencil and write this down. This show has never been more powerful. The voices behind it have never been more powerful. The audience has never been more powerful. And we're going to deliver a knockout blow to your progressive insanity on 5 November, and then we're going to secure the deal after that.
So there's Steve Bannon. He's staying in the fight. He's kind of got a Trump-like attitude about this, but he's another political prisoner. This is actually happening, Julie.
It's actually happening, and you know this, Vince, because you've been covering my work for 3.5 years on this, and I've covered, I can't tell you how many court proceedings in this D.C. courthouse where the judges are as vicious and heartless as the Biden-Harris DOJ. But what's ironic too is Steve Bannon getting out of prison today after contempt of Congress convictions by D.C. jury. At the same time, Vince, uncovering all of the malfeasance, potentially criminality, by Vice Chair Liz Cheney of that committee. I have a big piece at Real Clear Investigations on this. You and I have already talked about this. And all these secret text messages between Liz Cheney and Cassidy Hutchinson, who then dramatically changed her account of what happened in the White House on January 6th, perjured herself under oath, not just before the J6 committee, but before the American people, making up out of whole cloth a story about what happened in the SUV that day, about her writing down a note that could possibly have been a tweet that President Trump could have posted that afternoon. She didn't write the note. All of a sudden remembering that she did hear about the potential of weapons and firearms at the Ellipse when she had already testified 3 times before that she had never heard that. And this is all at the behest of Liz Cheney, who connected with Cassidy Hutchinson behind the scenes in encrypted chat messages. And then it appears she led her public testimony to perjure herself as Liz Cheney was tampering with witnesses, tampering with evidence. Where's the contempt of Congress plus other charges against Liz Cheney for doing far more damage than Steve Bannon ever did, which he didn't do any. He just defied a subpoena demanding his records.
Yes, in the interest of protecting executive privilege. So, and meanwhile, we've seen throughout history how this works with Democrats. Lois Lerner is held in contempt of Congress. Nothing happens to her. Eric Holder is held in contempt of Congress. Nothing happens. You have Merrick Garland has been held in contempt of Congress. Nothing has happened to him because he's in charge. And, it turns out somebody is above the law. It's the Attorney General of the United States. That doesn't apply. But if you're Steve Bannon, because you dared work in the Trump White House, you will have your life destroyed.
Absolutely right. And of course, we can't forget that Peter Navarro, one of Trump's closest aides, also spent 4 months in prison for the same charges. So, to cover now what this J6 committee did, not just Liz Cheney events, keep in mind that Barry Loudermilk, the chairman of the subcommittee investigating the J6 committee, has reported a huge trove of evidence that has been destroyed by that committee, including every single recording of the witness depositions that were taken by the J6 committee, upwards of 1,000 interviews. Those videos destroyed. We still have several hundred transcripts of those interviews that have not been made public. So the malfeasance and criminality by that committee, again, as Steve Bannon just said in his press conference, we need a separate J6 committee, and those who lied under oath, misled the American people, must face the same sort of consequences that they threw at Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro.
Right, and the goal of that is to basically make it so that people don't abuse power like this. That's the goal, and it's just awful to see what's happening. So tonight, I want to get your assessment of what you think Kamala Harris is doing this evening. She's going to be speaking on the Ellipse. They're making a big deal out of this. They're like, just like Trump did, we're gonna speak here. Okay, so what is this? How is this the closing argument of a presidential campaign?
I mean, this is all that they have left, right? We have seen her completely implode on the campaign trail. Softball interviews, she still can't give a straight answer on anything, not the least of which is her own specific policy proposals where she differs from her boss, Joe Biden, how she will lead the country and the world. So all they have left, I joke that every day is January 6th, 2021 to a Democrat. They wake up every day. It's like still in Saigon.
Yes.
You know that song by Bon Seger after Vietnam. It's like they're still on Capitol Hill. Like they cannot move on. So she thinks that this is going to be the compelling closing argument that if Donald Trump wins, every day will be like an insurrection. He will defy the rule of law. He will torch the Constitution, all the same sort of things that they've been saying now for almost 4 years. So it's an odd final argument. Apparently, there's some tension in the ranks. I've seen some reporting on this. Democrats who feel like this is not a winning closing argument, that the fixation on January 6th has been completely lost on most voters. So, but they're expecting, I guess, 40 to 50,000 participants, federal government employees and Georgetown professors and university students, a 95% Democratic city turning out to support her. Will there be tears as people relive Mimas walking through the Capitol, taking selfies?
Uh-huh.
Will people start fainting, thinking of, the QAnon shaman and his horns and body paint in the Senate chamber? This could be a very emotional event for these people. And we should really extend our sympathy.
Yes, I didn't really even put it together. This is like a cult gathering, and you're right about that. So on this issue of President Trump and what he would do if he gets back into the presidency, I just want to play like a very short clip of President Trump's very long conversation with Joe Rogan this past week. It took me a couple days to get through it. I kept checking back in on it. I was like, I'm going to listen some more. And I was struck by this moment, which I don't think is appearing on MSNBC or CNN.
Level that the president has power.
Well, if I win, this will be my last election. But I think I owe it to the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I owe it to the country. We have to have fair elections.
So there's President Trump being like, hey, if I win, let's be honest, this is my last election. I can't run anymore. Does that sound like a dictator to you?
No, of course not. If only. My fear, and I think the fear of others, is that when he does win the White House and he does have this authority, especially at his DOJ, that he will not use it in the way that will bring the same level of justice that this DOJ has inflicted, not just on him and his family and associates, but of course, Vince, the more than 1,500 Americans who have been rounded up. They announced new arrests just today. Men in Florida, men in West Virginia, being arrested nearly 4 years later for their participation in the January 6th protest. My fear is that a Donald Trump DOJ will not, turn around and with fair play and use the same laws and tactics that this DOJ and DC federal courthouse, these new rules, new laws, new standards they have created against Donald Trump and J6ers, and turn this around on the people who really deserve it, who really defied the rule of law, who really violated the Constitution and due process, et cetera, especially against really vulnerable people who had no way to fight back.
So I wonder what your thoughts are then on President Trump. I think it was with Hugh Hewitt. He was asked whether or not he would offer a pardon to Hunter Biden as a means to heal the country and say, I want to be done with this nonsense. And I think President Trump indicated that, he's open to that might be the route he takes. Do you think that's wise? I mean, I think ultimately, obviously the goal is a country that can come back together and not be so divisive and not have a weaponized justice system. And President Trump is saying even in the face of legitimate charges that could be brought against Hunter Biden, that even in the face of that, I'll give him a pardon. What do you think of that idea?
I mean, I would strongly oppose that. First of all, I think Joe Biden will probably pardon his son on his way out. He has nothing to lose at this point. He's lost, everything. So he has nothing to lose by doing that. But I would invite President Trump and others to read the Political report that was filed last night. And this is a 2-year fight to get the unsealed or partially unsealed documents about the executive privilege fight in the federal courthouse in Washington, where Joe Biden, for the first time in history, repeatedly rejected Donald Trump's claims of executive privilege. He is the only sitting president to deny executive privilege protections to his predecessor. He denied that over and over, and this allowed top aides, including his lawyers, including aides to Mike Pence, to go before a one-sided grand jury proceeding in Washington, break every precedent of executive privilege to get this information and bring this bogus indictment against him for January 6th. I would encourage Team Trump to read that before there's any consideration of pardoning Joe Biden's son.
Julie Kelly of the Julie Kelly Substack. That's Declassified by Julie Kelly Substack. Julie, always good to have you with us. Thank you so much. All right, coming up just a few minutes from now, we'll be talking to Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, because we're trying to get non-citizens off the voting rolls. I can't even believe this is an issue. The Biden administration wants to keep them there. Attorney General Miyares wants to get rid of them. Here's what Miyares has been saying about it.
It's not a purge. These are individuals that voluntarily, on their own, identify as non-citizens. And essentially what they're asking us to do, what the Department of Justice is asking us to do, is to ignore Virginia law.
Yeah, just ignore it. Don't follow the law. Keep the foreigners on the voter rolls. You know, if there's any benefit from this story whatsoever, you would hope that at the very least it would really tell voters on whose side each party is. If they're fighting to water down the value of your vote, they're not on your side.
It just goes to show you the misplaced priorities, the lawfare of this Department of Justice. The right leaders set the right priorities. The idea that they would come into Virginia, attack a decades-old law, and then go after simply just days before an election really defies all common sense. But as we all know, common sense is very common in Washington these days.
No, it is not. So Attorney General Miyares is going to join us here in just a couple of minutes. We're going to talk about that. How quickly could this fight be resolved? Will the United States Supreme Court be able to step in with any sort of alacrity? Get in there quickly in order to fix things up, in order to help the state. We're hearing lots of good things in Virginia. Lots of really good things about the election. Let's not screw them up with having foreigners cast ballots. Even President Trump has decided that Virginia seems pretty good. Like there's a chance he'll be here on Saturday. Can he win it? We'll see. But if he does, that's the election, baby. Stay with us. Attorney General Miyares next. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up top of the hour, the founder of the Tucker Carlson Network will be here. That's right, Tucker Carlson joins us, my good buddy. And you can chat with us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump is doing very well in the polls right now. Could be a good election for him. But the left, well, they're opening fire at the way we administer elections nationwide as a result of all of that, including the Biden administration's effort right now to make it so that foreigners are on the voting rolls in various states, to include the Commonwealth of Virginia. Joining us now to discuss that is the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Ben, thanks so much for having me. Great to be with you.
This is a wild story. I can't even believe that we're still talking about this. It seems common sense to me that non-citizens should not be on the voter rolls. But today, the United States Department of Justice under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris insisted to the United States Supreme Court they need to stay there. What's going on?
Well, as you've noted, common sense isn't very common in Washington, D.C. So this all dates back to a 2006 law signed by Democratic governor, then Governor Tim Kaine, that to remove non-citizens off our voter rolls. And so what has happened is individuals go into our local DMV. They're seeking driving privileges. As you know, the Democrats under Northam made it much easier to get driving privileges if you're non-citizens. And they've clicked a box affirming they're a non-citizen, but they've ended up on our voting rolls. Either they have inadvertently registered to vote or somebody else registered them and never determined they were non-citizens. DMV forwards this to the Department of Elections, and they then notify the individual on a case-by-case basis, saying, listen, you have self-identified as a non-citizen. We're going to give you a period of time to come make sure you know, let the voter registrars know that you are indeed a citizen. Otherwise, if you don't let us know that, we're going to have to remove you off the voter rolls. And that is the process that's been in place. It is remarkable to me that 25 days before the election, the Department of Justice, of everything and all the challenges we're facing right now in our country, this is what they would choose to pursue. And so we've now litigated this in court. And right now we've appealed what was a Fourth Circuit ruling that we were not pleased with to the Supreme Court, requesting an emergency stay. Because right now what the district court did is they essentially have ordered the Commonwealth of Virginia to place non-citizens, over 1,000, close to 1,500 roughly, back on our voter rolls. And that really is the issue. They're asking us to ignore Virginia law. And that's why we're challenging this and taking this up to the Supreme Court.
So the Justice Department filing this afternoon alleges that Virginia is in, quote, clear violation of something called the quiet period provision. And additionally, they say that some eligible voters are apparently among the 1,600 that are at question. What do you say to their filing today?
First of all, this is not a purge. These are individuals that have self-identified as non-citizens. And listen, there is a chance that somebody's a non-citizen, check the wrong box. But our job is then, when you are getting information that this person has self-identified that they are not a citizen of the Commonwealth or the United States of America, to let them know, listen, we can't, by law, we're not allowing you on that voting roll. A purge is when somebody just says, listen, we're going to just randomly view anybody with a certain last name, we're going to get rid of them. That's what a purge is. That is not the case here. We categorically reject any notion this is a so-called purge. We're simply following the law about individuals that have self-identified. And then we give these individuals that maybe inadvertently checked the wrong box the ability to correct it. And then there's this final fail-safe. In Virginia, we allow same-day voter registration. So let's say hypothetically you go and you click the wrong box and you never bothered to check your mail, you never responded to the inquiries from the Department of Elections, and you show up, you could still register to vote that day and cast a provisional ballot. So there's multiple safeguards in place. We would categorically reject this. But think about this, Vince. Remember the SAVE Act, which Speaker Johnson championed, which would require at the federal level, federal law, that only citizens could vote in American elections. And remember the biggest argument against that. You had Chuck Schumer and others in the U.S. Senate said, this is not necessary, this is not needed, because each and every state have adequate provisions to make sure that non-citizens are not voting in their elections. And so on the same side, they defeat federal legislation saying the states have the adequate tools to make sure non-citizens vote, but then these same individuals, the same federal government, these same leftist groups are then suing these states that are actually trying to follow the law in their own books and ensure that non-citizens aren't on our voter rolls. It really is stunning to see, and again, misplaced priorities up in Washington.
Attorney General Miyares, one of the things I've noticed about the numbers as we're talking about them is that right now the only numbers that are being contested is 1,600 non-citizens. If I recall correctly, Virginia had removed over 6,000 non-citizens from the voter rolls. Does that mean that those other, let's do some quick math here, 4,400 are not actually being debated? In other words, those non-citizens were successfully removed and they will not be coming back?
No, actually what it was is up until the so-called quiet period of 90 days before, we removed 63. The Department of Election removed 6,300. Those are not being contested, nor the 59,000 deceased Virginians that were also removed over the process. We announced those, but the governor announced as part of his executive order that we would be checking on a regular basis those that have self-identified. So this is really post-August 7th, 1,500 roughly. And just to remind your viewers, take you back in the Wayback Machine, Bob McDonnell, when he won his race for Attorney General in Virginia all the way back in 2005, his statewide total was roughly about 580, if I recall. It was definitely less than 1,000. And so we have elections, and Virginia is a swing state. We have a lot of elections that are decided by just a handful of votes. And so, yes, we want to make sure that our voting rules are accurate. We want to make sure if you're eligible to vote, exercise that amazing God-given privilege that you have to vote in our elections if you're an American citizen. But yes, if you have self-identified that you're not an American citizen, you end up on our voting rolls,
yes,
we're going to have to do our job, and that's why we're appealing to the Supreme Court.
Well, one of the many ironies in this story is that it is a felony for an alien to register to vote in the United States of America. And as Han von Spakovsky, the elections expert, points out at the Heritage Foundation, that what the DOJ should be doing right now is actually asking you to assist them in providing a list of anybody who may have broken federal law. Has anybody at the DOJ reached out to do that?
No. And here's the other great irony. Somebody that is perhaps an individual that's here on a green card or they have a visa and they're not a citizen and they check the wrong box, you would think, and if they actually end up inadvertently thinking they have essentially voting privileges, they get individual notification in the mail on the voting roll to go vote. Wouldn't you think we should actually protect individuals here where they're not voting and we're giving them the right information saying, in some ways, if you end up on the voting roll, we all know what happens. You get inundated with text messages and phone calls and campaigns saying, go vote, go vote, go vote. They're actually inducing this person possibly that really otherwise wouldn't know to potentially commit a felony. So you would think this is one way to protect. We talk about this over-criminalization we have in our society. Why don't we make sure that these non-citizens aren't being induced to go vote as well? Yeah. So you have multiple layers here. We want to make sure that our elections have both integrity, but also we want to be able to do our jobs. And that's really what we're just asking the Supreme Court is allow us to continue to follow Virginia law. This is not a purge. These are individuals that have voluntarily self-identified as non-citizens. We just want to make sure those individuals aren't on our voter rolls come Election Day.
You know, this week I had some business to deal with personally in Virginia at the DMV. So while I was there, I was dealing with their touchscreen as I was standing there. You know, at the DMV, it's a cattle call. It's it's a very dehumanizing experience, unfortunately. But I'm standing there, I'm using the touchscreen, and I'm telling you that the menu items on this touchscreen, and I look at all these things in detail for a living, was confusing enough that I had to put my head up and go, wait a second, I don't want to change anything about my voter registration status. Why am I getting this screen? It's amazing. And I think that screen is presented to everybody who's going to the DMV, Mr. Attorney General.
Yeah, well, listen, I will say, do a shameless plug for the Youngkin administration. When he took office, the average DMV wait time for a citizen that walked in their DMV was about 52 minutes. And last I checked, I think it was down to 12. So they've gotten much more efficient, but we want to make sure, listen, that's why we have these safeguards to make sure that if an individual checks that wrong box, they have a period of time where they can make sure that they can notify their registrars and make sure that they are properly registered. But listen, at the end of the day, this is a law, a bipartisan bill that's been in the books for close to 2 decades, and this surely shouldn't be something that's being litigated. Yeah. The time and resources the Department of Justice is utilizing on this, I think, really is stunning, and that's why we're asking the Supreme Court to step in.
Attorney General Miyares, on a different issue, are you going to be with the governor, President Trump, this weekend in Salem, Virginia?
I think that, yes. My team is trying to plan all the logistics, but that's my understanding. And, we're excited. I mean, we're seeing a lot out there on the ground that gives us a lot of both hope and confidence. I was at the grocery store the other day, and I saw a bumper sticker that said, "Make groceries affordable again." And I thought, wow, that just kind of sums up this campaign. It's just harder to live in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's America. It's harder to get groceries, harder to put gas in your car, harder to pay rent, harder to just buy a home. I saw a study that came out that said when Trump left office, the median household income in America to be a first-time home buyer was $74,000, and that number now today in America is $128,000. That's just stunning. It's just that much more expensive to really pursue the American dream under the Biden-Harris administration. I think that's why 80% roughly Americans think we're on the wrong track, and they want change, and I think that's what this election really is about. So, listen, every vote counts. We encourage everybody, if you haven't vote and vote early. I know that there were a lot of times Republicans poo-pooed that, but we really have encouraged it because what that does is when you vote early, your names get off the voter list, and we no longer have to text and bother you. The average voter needs to be touched, either call, text, or knocked on the door 7 times to remind them to vote, and that actually saves us money. We can go to what we call low propensity voters. Those individuals only vote maybe once every 4 or 5 times. We can actually expend those resources to communicate with them about the importance to go vote. And it's a critical election. I think the decisions we make in the next 5 or 6 days in this country are really going to determine the next 2 or 3 decades for our trajectory. And so I don't know about you, but I'm really tired of weakness at home and weakness abroad.
Me too. Attorney General Miyares, in Virginia, President Trump trailed Hillary Clinton by 5 points in 2016 in the final tally, 10 points against Joe Biden in 2020. Being one of the top Republicans in the state and an insightful guy, how close do you think this could be?
I think it's going to be close. I think the Biden-Harris approval ratings, when I got elected in 2021, Joe Biden's approval rating in Virginia was about 49%. So he ran just a couple points ahead of the presidential approval rating. Gosh, the last poll I saw, Biden's approval rating was 42, 43%. So Virginians are not happy. They've seen what they've seen at the gas pump, at the grocery store. And what they don't like is the media constantly telling them, oh, no, you don't understand. The economy's great. They don't feel that. They certainly don't feel that. And then you take this kind of extreme left woke ideology that seems to be really pervasive in today's Democratic Party. And that's really, really gotten so many parents tired. I talked to an individual. This is kind of an amazing kind of anecdotal story, but this is an individual that reached out to me. We were at an event, and he's an attorney. And he said, he didn't vote for Trump either in 16 or 20, but he said he has a son, a middle school son. He went to go visit his son at middle school. And at the middle school, they noticed that each boy was sitting by themselves at a table with just other girls. And so he asked the principal, why is this? And he says, well, we found when the boys are all together, they get a little bit too rambunctious. And, boys being boys, middle school boys. And he said, and he asked his son about it. And he said he was so aghast at this sense that they don't want young boys to even be boys anymore. That it's so frustrated him. He said, I'm going to vote for Trump this time. I didn't vote for him in 16 or 20, but I'm going to vote for him this time because I'm so tired of suddenly my son feeling like just by being just a normal, 12-year-old boy, somehow he's somehow bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he's being, disruptive or anything. But at the end of the day, he said, I just couldn't understand why you would segregate boys from actually being able to build friendships with other boys, which, is such an important part when you're a teenager. I thought it was a really enlightening observation that somebody that he said, listen, I didn't vote for President Trump in 16 or 20. He called it a war on boys. And He said, I'm tired of the war on boys. And I thought it was a very kind of anecdotal thing that you just kind of came out of nowhere. And it really opened my eyes a little bit to some of the frustration some of these parents are feeling, for sure.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, sometimes it's just the casual acts of tyranny that open your eyes. You never know what moment might trigger you. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General Jason Miyares in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Always good to have you on the show. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, one last thing I really should ask. This is the most critical question. How quickly will the Supreme Court get back to you? I didn't ask. Do you think it could be imminent?
I think we'll get an answer in the next 24, 48 hours. That'd be my expectation. So stay tuned.
The next 24 to 48 hours. Okay, sir, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
There
Bye-bye.
he is, the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. Whoa, almost. Yeah, Kamala Harris just a few hours away now from doing her version of the blood red speech that Joe Biden gave. Remember that? In Philadelphia? Blood red speech. He had United States Marines stationed behind him as he hurled some of the most vile invective you can imagine against his political opponents. And Kamala Harris has decided that her closing argument is going to take place in Washington, D.C., doing the very same thing. Will it work? We'll see. Andy's in St. Augustine, Florida right now, line 2. Andy, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. How are you doing?
I should say St. Augustine, Florida. I'm sorry. I always get it. I get it wrong when I think of St. Augustine, but that's how they say it down there, right?
No, St. Augustine. Hey, I just want to say it's very appropriate that as she's holding her last rally or whatever it is tonight in Washington, D.C., where all her constituents are, because that's the people she represents. She doesn't represent the rest of the country. She represents the ruling elite class in Washington, D.C.
This is such an incredibly good point. Thank Andy. This is such a good point. You're right about this. She is everywhere I've read about this tonight. They've all referred to it as her closing argument. In other words, this is her campaign's message. This is her closing argument. And she chose Washington, D.C., of all places where her constituents are, in order to make this, quote, closing argument. It's such a great point because really, she just doesn't connect, does she, with normal people across the country?
I don't think she can speak English very well, so maybe they understand her up there. I don't know.
I know. I don't think they do, but they pretend they do. That's the key. That's the difference here. Andy, thank you. That's such a good point that she's ending her campaign in D.C., the people she represents, the ruling elite, and not ordinary Americans. Yeah, you would think if you're making a closing argument, would you do it in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Michigan or, hey, Virginia? No, not even that. She couldn't even do it in Northern Virginia. It's not blue enough. So right smack in the middle of D.C. You know what I would like? I'd like a cell phone analysis. You see these? You know how they do like the analysis of where the cell phones are, where they've been, how many Kamala Harris rallies they've been bussed into? How much AstroTurf are we going to get tonight at this blood red speech that she's holding on the ellipse? Probably a lot. Speaking of AstroTurfing, I've got some new details about Kamala Harris's campaign coming up, the way they're trying to fake a groundswell of support. That's kind of fun. And more importantly, at least for now, Tucker Carlson is just moments away. Stay tuned for that.